Recall the structure of Daniel 11, of verses 23 through 39, as revealed by Daniel 8's structure and keys. Recall the section, Attack on God, verses 36 through 39. Recall the structure, a parallel or repetition that was discovered there. Recall that on closer inspection, a problem appeared. Oops, this one doesn't belong. Verse 39 did not fit the pattern clearly set up by verses 36 through 38. Let's look once again at the parallel sections, Heart, verses 25 through 30, and Attack on God, verses 36 through 39. Here are the verses. I have highlighted our problem verse, verse 39. Notice that this removes a lot of blank space at the bottom. But notice there appears to be a lot of blank space where there is no heart at the bottom of the parallel section, verses 25 through 30. Is this a problem also? So if there is a problem, and there is one, and this is not the correct structure, then what is? Here's the correct structure with reference to Daniel 8's structure and keys. Removing the references to Daniel 8 gives us the structure of Daniel 11, the little horn, verses 23 through 40a. So how do we obtain this structure from the previous? Returning to our structure referencing Daniel 8's structure and keys, let's examine the attacking army of the little horn, the priests, verse 23, and peace, verse 24. Are these two verses a unit? Yes, we can see this in two ways. Verse 23 talks of deceit, deceitfully, while verse 24 talks of coming in like a lamb, peaceably, and then becoming a lion, scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Let's see this in the texts themselves. The Daniel 11, 23 and 24 connection. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. He shall enter peaceably, even upon the fattest places of the province. And he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. So we have deceit, deceitfully, coming in like a lamb, peaceably, then becoming a lion. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. The second way of seeing these two verses are a unit. Verse 23 talks of an army becoming strong with a small people, while verse 24 talks of destruction, scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Let's see this in the texts themselves. The Daniel 11, 23 and 24 connection continued. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. He shall enter peaceably even upon the fattest places of the province. And he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. So an army, a small people, which causes destruction, war. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Returning to our structure, we now see that verses 23 and 24 can be treated as a unit. Let's examine the attacking army of the little horn, Verse 31a. Attack on the sanctuary in heaven, verse 31b. And attack on the priestly ministry of Christ, verse 31c. Are these three sections a unit? Yes. We turn to their parallel in Daniel 8 to see this. Here is Daniel 8's structure. Here is the parallel to Daniel 11:31a, b, and c. Daniel 8:11b, c, and 12. Let's examine the texts themselves. The structure of Daniel 8:11b through 12. And by him the daily was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down, and a host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground. The daily, and by him the daily was taken away. Sanctuary, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And host, and an host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground. This is the current structure, part of the half chiasm of verses 10 through 12. The daily, and by him the daily was taken away. The daily, against the daily by reason of transgression. Cast down, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Cast down, and it cast down the truth to the ground. An host, and an host was given him. This is an equally valid structure, which makes verses 11b through 12a a chiasm, a unit. Returning to the structure of Daniel 8, we see that the structure can be rewritten as this simplified structure where verses 11b through 12 are now a unit. Returning to Daniel 11's structure, referencing Daniel 8's structure and keys, we see that the structure can now be rewritten as this simplified structure where verse 31 is now a unit, and with a renaming of sections, we obtain our current and final structure. The structure of Daniel 11, the little horn, verses 23 through 40a. What indicates there is a chiasm here? In the section Conflict, the king of the north versus the king of the south, verses 25 through 28, we read, both these kings at one table, verse 27. While in the section, the king of the north's priest army peacefully enters the church, then attacks and destroys the saints, verses 23 and 24, we read, league, verse 23. The text, verse 23, actually reads after the league referring to both these kings at one table. Clearly, these two sections, verses 23 and 24, and verses 25 through 28, are connected, related. This is probably an appropriate time to say something about chronology. Chronologically, the conflict between the two kings happens first. Then the takeover of the church happens next. And finally, the appointed time. We know this appointed time is the final event in the three steps because we read in verse 27 that the league, it shall not prosper or hold, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed. It is perhaps appropriate at this time to also give a description of the types of content of our structure. Verses 23 through 28 give a timeline or sequence of events. Verses 31 through 39 give details of some of those events. Verses 29, 30, and 40a is the appointed time, an event. Returning to our structure, it is now time to look at its contents. First, verses 36 through 38, the king of the north and the king of the south. Or perhaps better titled, the king of the north's split personality. Recall the structure of verses 36 through 38, a parallel or repetition. Here is the structure fully explained. As you can see, it is rather complex and detailed. We'll skip over it for the moment, but we'll return to it shortly to fully explain it. Recall that conflict, the king of the north versus the king of the south, verses 25 through 28, and the king of the north and the king of the south, the king of the north's split personality, verses 36 through 38, are parallels, or connected, as established by Daniel 8's keys and structure. Because of verses 36 through 38's parallel structure, and verses 25 through 28's conflict between the king of the north and king of the south, we deduced that the king of the north, verses 36 through 38, has a split personality, a king of the north side and a king of the south side. Returning to verses 36 through 38, who are these two kings? Who is the king of the north? The Bishop of Rome, originally Christian, that is, for God, he turned against him. Need a reminder why? Recall Daniel 2's feet of iron mixed with miry clay. The iron, that's Rome. The miry clay, that's a corrupted church. Thus, iron plus clay equals Rome plus church equals the Church of Rome. Who is the king of the south? A man-centered religion. Atheism, paganism. Both deify man. Atheism deifies present men by making him and his science, wisdom, the ultimate test of truth and reality. Paganism deifies dead men by making them his gods. Don't believe me? Here is an example. Aztec fall. Codex Borgia, Pre-Conquest, plate 66. The Aztecs tell how the gods and goddesses once lived in heaven, in a garden paradise, but because they plucked roses from or broke branches on a forbidden tree, death, darkness, and sin came into the world, and they were banished from heaven and given jobs in the world and underworld. This is one version of the story. The goddess Itzpapalotl, the forbidden tree, blood, the tree bleeds after being desecrated, and the results are darkness, night, sin, and death. The goddess Itzpapalotl is a deified Eve, doubt it not. Pharaoh, king of the south. And Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go." Exodus 5:2. Next, verses 25 through 28. Conflict. The king of the north versus the king of the south. Daniel 11:25 through 28. The king of the north versus the king of the south. Paganism, atheism. 1. The king of the north battles the king of the south. Paganism, atheism, and defeats him. Verses 25 and 26. And he shall stir up his power and his courage, heart, against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand. For they shall forecast devices against him. Yea, they that feed of the portion of his meat, priest of paganism, shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. We interrupt our discussion for a moment here to let the 2nd and 3rd century presbyter Tertullian explain the passage that was just read. Tertullian, 145 to 220 AD, on persecution. Our source: the oftener we are mown down by you, the more in number we grow. The blood of Christians is seed. Tertullian, Apology, chapter 50. Roberts, Alexander, and James Donaldson, editors. The Ante-Nicene Fathers, New York, Charles Scribner's Sons, 1918, Volume 3, page 55. Continuing with the discussion. 2. The king of the north makes a league with the king of the south, paganism, atheism. Verse 27. And both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed. Note: the league holds until the time of the end, or the appointed time. 3. The king of the north returns to his land with the riches of the king of the south, paganism, atheism. Verse 28. Then shall he return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits and return to his own land. Note: the king of the north is now against the holy covenant, the new covenant that the Messiah the Prince cut with his people. Next, verses 23 and 24, the king of the north's priest army peacefully enters the church, then attacks and destroys the saints. Daniel 11:23 and 24, the king of the north becomes the Catholic Christian Church. 1. After embracing paganism, atheism, the king of the north hides his true character, and beginning with a small and or feeble people, grows to become a great army. Verse 23. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. 2. Posing as Christian, he infiltrates and commandeers the Christian church. Verse 24a. He shall enter peaceably, even upon the fattest, heaven blessed, Genesis 27:28, places of the province. 3. With control of the church, he now reveals his true character and persecutes and destroys those loyal to God, the saints of the Most High. Verse 24b. And he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. Next, verses 32 through 35, attack on the saints. Daniel 11:32 through 35, the king of the north infiltrates the Reformation. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong, and do exploits. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. Yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil, many days. Now when they shall fall, they shall be holpen with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. And some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them, and to purge, and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. Flatteries. And flatteries. These are the occurrences of flatteries. Understand and understanding. These are the occurrences of understanding. Shall fall and shall fall. These are the occurrences of shall fall. Here is the structure of our text. Looking at the bottom half, Its theme is persecution. Looking at the upper half, he is the king of the north, while them are the persecuted people of God. To me, it seems that the king of the north won a group by flattery, and they then went on to use his method, flattery, to unite themselves with the persecuted people. Infiltration, in other words. Its theme is infiltration. So once again, here's the structure. Next, verses 31 and 39. The Mikdash Ma'oz, the sanctuary of strength, and the Mibzar Ma'oz, the fortress of strength. Daniel 11:31 and 39. The king of the north and the abomination of desolation. An arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, Mikdash Ma'oz, and shall take away the daily, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Verse 31. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds, fortress of strength, Mibzar Ma'oz, with a strange god, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. Verse 39. We'll examine the upper half first. The sanctuary of strength, Mikdash Ma'oz. The fortress of strength, Mibzar Ma'oz. St. Paul's outside the walls. Looking inside, notice what is at the far end. Here's a close-up. Don't know what it is? Here it is in context. And once again in context. So it is a papal throne in the church. Don't you see that what the popes have here is a blasphemous play off the Ark of the Covenant? The popes are seated between two angels or cherubims. And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims, which are upon the ark of the testimony, of all things that I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. Exodus 25:22. Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Recall that Paul, the writer of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, also wrote Ephesians. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints, and of the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto an holy temple in the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. Ephesians 2:19-22. So the Pope sits in or over the church, shewing himself that he is God. The Pope and God. Our source, which includes a picture of Pope Leo XIII, Pope from the 20th of February 1878 to his death on the 20th of July 1903. The page from which our quote is taken, as well as the encyclical on the reunion of Christendom, Praeclara Gratulationes Publicae, June 20th, 1894. We hold upon this earth the place of God Almighty. Pope Leo XIII, Praeclara Gratulationes Publicae, on the reunion of Christendom, June 20th, 1894. The Great Encyclical Letters of Pope Leo XIII, New York, Benziger Brothers, 1903, page 3:04. Returning back to the discussion, notice the dishonor associated with the sanctuary of strength: pollute and take away, and the honor associated with the fortress of strength: acknowledge and increase with glory. Recall we saw this previously. The parallel dishonor versus honor structure of Daniel 11:36 through 38. Returning back to the discussion, now we'll examine the lower half. The they are the arms, an army, that shall stand on his part. The he is the king of the north, which is the he of his, in arms shall stand on his part. The them are the same as they, which are the arms. Abomination that maketh desolate? Recall the abomination that maketh desolate, the union of church and state. Abomination that maketh desolate and divide the land? What is that? What is the connection? Daniel 2's feet of iron mixed with clay. Iron mixed in clay strengthens the clay, allowing the church to persecute those which it disagreed with, the so-called heretics. But clay mixed in iron divides the iron, leading to wars between the states or nations. The church became the advisor to kings, allowing it to rule over the nations. Its ears and voice were in the council chamber of each, and it could thus play one nation against the other, keeping them divided and weak, or use them to destroy its enemies. And finally, verses 29 and 30 and 40a, the appointed time. Recall the chiastic structure of Daniel 11. The history of verses 5 through 15. Colors or flavors the understanding of verses 23 through 12:3. That is, it adds information to these verses that helps in their understanding. So let's look at these verses. Here is a summary of the history contained in Daniel chapter 11 and the first 3 verses of chapter 12. The verses of interest to us are verses 5 through 15, which is the history of the king of the north and the king of the south, 2 of the Hellenistic kingdoms that result from the division of Alexander the Great's empire to the 4 winds of heaven, verses 3 and 4. In Daniel 8, the king of the north and the king of the south were 2 of the 4 horns that arose on the goat after its great horn was broken. Daniel 11, 5 through 15, the king of the north and the king of the south. The divisions of Alexander the Great's empire. Here's Judea, the land of Daniel's people, after the Babylonian captivity. To the north, the king of the north, the house of Seleucus. And to the south, the king of the south, the house of Ptolemy, the king of Egypt. Now zooming in on the line of confrontation between the 2 kings, notice the island. It is the island of Cyprus. From the color of the island, it is obvious that it is part of Ptolemaic Egypt. Returning back to the previous view of Alexander's divided empire, the king of the north, the house of Seleucus, is the king of Babylon. But there is more. Hippolytus of Rome, 170 to 235 AD. Babylon equals Rome. Our source? For he sees, when in the isle Patmos, a revelation of awful mysteries, which he recounts freely and makes known to others. Tell me, blessed John, apostle and disciple of the Lord, what didst thou see and hear concerning Babylon? Arise and speak, for it sent thee also into banishment. Hippolytus of Rome, Treatise on Christ and Antichrist, Section 36. Roberts, Alexander, and James Donaldson, editors, The Ante-Nicene Fathers, Buffalo Christian Literature Company, 1886, Volume 5, page 211. We know that church tradition, without exception, teaches that John was sent to Patmos by Rome. Thus, Hippolytus is clearly implying that Babylon is a code name for Rome. Eusebius, 260 to 341 AD. Babylon equals Rome. Our source? And Peter makes mention of Mark in his first epistle, which they say that he wrote in Rome itself, as is indicated by him when he calls the city by a figure, Babylon, as he does in the following words: The church that is at Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you, and so doth Marcus my son. 1 Peter 5:13. Eusebius, Church History, Book 2, Chapter 15. Schaff, Philip, and Henry Wace, editors. A Select Library of Nicene and Post-Nicene Fathers. Series 2, New York, Charles Scribner's Sons, 1904, Volume 1, page 116. Eusebius, in agreement with Hippolytus, says that Babylon is a code name, or in his own words, a figure for Rome. So we see then that both the king of the north, of verses 23 through 12:3, the bishop of Rome, and the king of the north, of verses 5 through 15, the house of Seleucus, are equally the kings of Babylon. This is not surprising, though. We should expect this as a natural fallout of the chiastic structure of Daniel 11. Returning back to the structure of Daniel 11, verses 23 through 40, for we have not yet explained verses 29 and 30 and 40a, the appointed time. Daniel 11, 29 and 30, and 40a, at the time appointed, the time of the end. 1. The king of the north attacks the king of the south, paganism, atheism. Verse 29. At the time appointed, he, the king of the north, shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter. 2. The king of the south, paganism, atheism, attacks the king of the north and defeats him. Verse 30a. For the ships of Chittim, Cyprus, recall Cyprus is part of Ptolemaic Egypt, the king of the south shall come against him, paralleled by verse 40a, and at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. 3. The king of the north returns and acts against the covenant. Verse 30b. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Note, recall the equivalents of the time appointed, or appointed time, and the time of the end. Even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. Verse 35.